Internalized oppression, the silent colonizer within. 1. Nature of internalized oppression. Internalized oppression refers to the psychological and behavioral absorption of dominant societal ideologies by members of marginalized or subordinated groups. It occurs when individuals begin to accept, believe, and replicate the myths, stereotypes, and discriminatory beliefs imposed upon them by oppressive systems. This concept highlights a deep, invisible layer of oppression, one that is no longer enforced solely from outside, but reproduced from within. It marks a shift from external domination to internalized self-regulation, often resulting in self-doubt, shame, conformity, or complicity. As Paulo Freire stated, the oppressed, having internalized the image of the oppressor and adopted his guidelines, are fearful of freedom. Internalized oppression is not simply psychological, it is structural, historical, and intergenerational, embedded in the colonial, racialized, gendered, and capitalist ordering of the world. 2. Processes of internalized oppression. Internalized oppression is cultivated through a cycle of socialization, sustained by institutions, education, media, religion, and policy. It operates subtly but systematically, involving the following key processes. Social conditioning and cultural messaging. From an early age, marginalized individuals are exposed to messages that devalue their identities, cultures, languages, bodies, and ways of knowing. These messages are persistent and normalized in textbooks, advertising, curriculum, religious teachings, and public policy. Mimicry and assimilation. Individuals may attempt to survive or succeed by mimicking the dominant culture, adopting its language, norms, and values, even at the cost of disowning their own heritage. Frantz Fanon described this as a colonization of the mind, where the oppressed internalize colonial logic. Self-policing and surveillance. Oppressed individuals may begin to monitor themselves and each other, ensuring they do not speak out, resist, or disrupt the way things are. This is compounded by fear of backlash, loss of opportunities, or exclusion. Lateral violence. Frustration and pain are sometimes redirected inward, resulting in intra-group conflict, gatekeeping, or judgment among members of the same marginalized community. Instead of confronting systemic injustice, energy is spent competing for scraps or attacking each other. Silencing and shame. Individuals may mute their voices, lower their aspirations, or remain passive in the face of injustice, believing they are unworthy or incapable of changing their condition. This includes scholars and students who feel they do not belong in academia or leadership. 3. Consequences of internalized oppression. The consequences of internalized oppression are personal, collective, and institutional. Self-erosion. Chronic feelings of self-doubt, inferiority, shame, and invisibility. A fractured sense of identity, where individuals feel torn between authenticity and acceptance. Cognitive dissonance and silence. Fear of speaking or writing with a critical voice, especially in academic spaces that privilege whiteness or Eurocentrism. Marginalized students may feel pressure to conform to neutral, objective, or Western norms to gain legitimacy. Stunted leadership and representation. Potential leaders from marginalized backgrounds may hesitate to lead or lead in ways that replicate oppressive models. Institutions may continue to appear diverse while upholding white, patriarchal, or elitist norms. Disempowerment of movements. Social justice and decolonization movements are weakened when internal divisions, self-censorship, or tokenism prevail. Liberation becomes performative or derailed when those who suffer injustice have internalized its logic. 4. Relevance in transformative education. Transformative education must confront internalized oppression as both a barrier to liberation and a site of healing and resistance. Curriculum design. A transformative curriculum must not only include marginalized voices, but also validate epistemologies and worldviews that were historically degraded. It must name and deconstruct the myths of white supremacy, patriarchy, classism, and colonialism that sustain internalization. Critical pedagogy. Pedagogies must cultivate conscientization, critical consciousness, a Freirean process where learners recognize, analyze, and resist internalized oppression. Classrooms become sites of unlearning and reclaiming a space to recover voice, memory, and power. Affirmation and reclamation. Teaching practices must center affirmation, restoration, and visibility. Students must be equipped to critique the system, see their worth, and co-create liberatory futures. Faculty and leadership training. Educators must reflect on how they may have internalized oppression or unknowingly transmitted it. Leadership development must include decolonial consciousness and transformative ethics. 5. Relevance in social justice research. In critical and social justice-oriented research, internalized oppression calls for epistemic humility, reflexive honesty, and decolonial ethics. Researcher positionality. Researchers from marginalized groups must navigate the tension between participation and resistance, especially in institutions that demand academic conformity. Internalized oppression may shape what questions are asked, whose knowledge is prioritized, and what voices are silenced. Knowledge production. Social justice research must expose and disrupt the internalization of epistemic inferiority, especially in African, Indigenous, and feminist contexts. This involves reclaiming authority, centering local knowledge, and healing the researcher as a knowing subject. Liberation as methodology. Research must not just describe the effects of oppression, but create space for its undoing through participatory methods, collective healing, and action-oriented frameworks. Transformative research is not about extracting knowledge, but co-producing hope. 6. Toward liberation, unlearning the internalized. Internalized oppression cannot be fully eradicated without transforming the systems that reproduce it. However, it can be named, unlearned, and healed through critical self-reflection and dialogue, collective storytelling and solidarity, counter-narratives and affirming scholarship, decolonial pedagogy and leadership, healing justice practices. As Bell Hooks writes, to be truly visionary, we have to root our imagination in our concrete reality while simultaneously imagining possibilities beyond that reality. 7. Concluding thought, healing is justice. Internalized oppression is not weakness. It is the wound of structural violence carried in silence. In transformative education and research, the journey is not simply to empower the oppressed, but to support their reawakening. To teach, lead, and research with justice means to walk alongside those reclaiming their voice, dignity, and imagination. Happy learning.